Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and we're going to go over something that probably a lot of folks have followed, maybe you haven't, and that is the Twitter Files, Part 4. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Words of Paradise for all of your pop culture, gaming, just nerdism, drama, for lack of a better term. We like to go over things in a decently objective manner, and that's what we're going to try and do with the Twitter Files Part 4, published by Michael, I'm going to assume that's Schellenberger. So let's just get right to it. So, Twitter Files Part 4, the removal of Donald Trump January 7th as the pressure builds, Twitter executives build the case for a permanent ban. So we're going to try and speedrun these, see what we can, learn what we can about the Twitter Files, and kind of what it means for Twitter going forward, what it meant for the past, and kind of how it's affected us normies. So, on Jan 7th, senior Twitter execs create justifications to ban Trump, seek a change of policy for Trump alone, distinct from other political leaders, express no concern for the free speech or democracy implications of a ban. The hashtag Twitter Files is reported with @LWoodhouse. For those catching up, please see Part 1 where Matt Taibbi documents how senior Twitter executives violated their own policies to prevent the spread of accurate information about Hunter Biden's laptop. Part 2 where Barry Weiss shows how the senior Twitter execs created secret blacklists to de-amplify disfavored Twitter users, not just specific tweets. And Part 3, where Matt Taibbi documents how senior Twitter execs censored tweets by Trump in the run-up to the November 2020 election while regularly engaging in representatives of the U.S. government, law enforcement, and agencies. Now, you might be asking, Leon, why are you covering this? You care about nerdy shit. That's true, I do. But as somebody who was... you just really don't like the Twitter Files being covered, do you, buddy? Hondo, you gotta love him. He's not very fond of big tech, and who can blame him? Isn't that right, buddy? Anyway, why would a regular nerd like me be covering something like this? This isn't about pop culture. Well, as somebody who was temporarily banned for just talking trash on Disney Star Wars, not using any sort of rhetoric or buzzwords or any hateful conducts and comments that can get you, suspended or whatnot. I'm just talking trash on a movie series I didn't like. That seemed... I didn't like that. I was a nobody on Twitter, I deleted that account. Don't really use it anymore. But I was a nobody on Twitter, and apparently something in the algorithm, upset them when I was talking about a Disney product. So even non-big political names, I have like 50-something followers on Twitter, or had on that account, were getting targeted probably by an algorithm. I mean, I wasn't saying someone was going in and looking at my stuff specifically. I was a nobody. But it just leads, begs the question, why would an algorithm care about something like that? Except for, well, Disney's a pretty big company, so, do with that information what you will. But that is why I care about this sort of thing and why I kind of wanted to go over it. For years, Twitter had resisted calls to ban Trump. Blocking a world leader from Twitter, it wrote in 2018, would hide important info and hamper necessary discussion around their words and actions. I mean, I think that's pretty fair and accurate. I would agree with that. There are plenty of people on Twitter in all sorts of upper echelons that I disagree with. But I do not want to see them banned or censored unless they break rules in an explicit format. So, come on, buddy. Blocking world leader from Twitter, removing their controversial tweets, would hide important information people should be able to see and debate. It would also not silence their leader, but it would certainly hamper necessary discussion around their words and actions. But after the events of January 6th, the internal and external pressure on Twitter's CEO, Jack Dorsey, grows. Former First Lady Michelle Obama, tech journalist Kay Arwisher, ADL, high-tech VC Chris Sacca, I assume is how that's pronounced, and many others publicly called Twitter to permanently ban Donald Trump. And we take a look at a couple of these. You've got blood in your hands, Jack and Zuck. For 4 years, you've rationalized this terror, inciting violent treason. It's not free speech. It's not a free speech exercise. If you work at those companies, it's on you too. Shut it down. The highlighted part. Now is the time for Silicon Valley companies to stop enabling this monstrous behavior and go even further than they have already by permanently banning this man from their platforms and putting in place policies to prevent their technology from being used by the nation's leaders to fuel insurrection. From Intelligencer. It's time for social media platforms to permanently ban Trump. Wyatt. Looks like they've got a photo from, I mean, it looks like some PS3 Resistance 2 monster. I mean, I'm sure that's not what it is, but sure what it looks like. 2 bare minimum tweets after the Capitol have been stormed by extremists is too little too late. Jack, it's overdue. Suspend Donald Trump until his account stops promoting disinformation and inciting violence. You know, it's nice to see disinformation all the way back, you know, and back then. I didn't think that word had caught on yet. Dorsey was on vacation in French Polynesia the week of January 4th through the 8th, 2021. He phoned into meetings, but also delayed much of the handling of the situation to senior execs at Yoel, which how do you pronounce his name? Yoel Roth. That's right, Yoel Roth, Twitter's global head of trust and safety, and Vijaya Gotti. My apologies if I pronounced that wrong. Head of legal policy and trust. As context, it's important to understand that Twitter's staff and senior execs are overwhelmingly progressive. Now, that might not seem like a big deal, because really, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a big deal as to what someone's political leanings are. But if your leanings are having you make decisions that only favor one side or the other, with a company as large as Twitter, that is unfair. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, these are all the public town square now. Unfortunately, whether we want to admit it or not, or whether we like that reality or not, people use the internet for their discourse. So when you do have one large group of individuals who are mainly aligned with one side and not the other, it can create a disparity that's just rife with opportunities for censorship. If it was full of if it was full of conservatives and they were suppressing liberals, I'd have the same viewpoint. No party or group of individuals should be suppressing another on things that services like this, which are basically the town square. In 2017, Roth tweeted that there were actual Nazis in the White House. Okay. All right. I don't know about that. Actual Nazis. That word has lost a lot of meaning the last several years. People like Shoe on Head are called Nazi. Shoe on Head is she's a fucking socialist, so I guess that's technically closer to Nazi than a lot of folks. It was a socialist party, but Shoe on Head's no Nazi. Things like these are balderdash. In April of 2022, Roth told a colleague that his goal is to drive change in the world, which is why he decided to not become an academic. Can't really argue too much there. Let's see what these are. Alright, Yoel Roth saying, yes, the person in the pink is clearly a bigger threat to your brand of feminism than actual Nazis in the White House. So, okay. Yeah, academia is by far academia, still I watch anime, is by far the most abusive working environment I've ever been in. The entire system is exploitative in a lot of ways. You know what? That's fair. I completely agree with that statement. And also not necessarily productive if your goal is to drive change in the world, which is the main reason I left. I don't know about that, but I will agree with it being exploitative. On January 7th, Jack emails employees saying Twitter needs to remain consistent in its policies, agreed, including the right of users to return to Twitter after a temporary suspension. I can agree with that as well. After Roth reassures an employee that people who care about this aren't happy with where we are, Jack's emails have been fine, but ultimately I think people want to hear from Vijaya or Dell or someone closer to the specifics of this who can reassure them that people care about this and are thinking deeply about these problems and aren't happy with where we are. A few engineers have reached out to me directly about it, and I'm chatting with them. But it's clear they just want to know that someone is doing something about this and that we're not ignoring issues here. Yes, looking out for the welfare of your employees is important, but I would not say that it is important enough to justify putting an entire half of the country at large on the back burner. There are other jobs out there. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else, but we're all citizens of the United States together. So if an entire half is feeling left out and feeling unheard and being unfairly treated, which these Twitter files have shown to be the case. That's not okay. Now, how do you remedy that? Put someone else in control. They could do the same thing to the other side. I don't have an answer for that. That's not really my area of expertise. We can just hope to get somebody in there that is fair and just. And frankly, whether you like it or not, I think Elon, for the most part, is that type of individual. Has he made missteps along the way? Absolutely. Will he continue? Of course. Nobody is without fault. But I do think that, as it currently stands, it is a more fair and prosperous place than it has been prior to his leadership. Alright, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, Roth DMs his colleagues with news that he is excited to share. Guess what? He writes, Judges approved repeat offender for civic integrity. The new approach would create a system where 5 violations, strikes, would result in permanent suspension. Progress! Exclaims a member of Roth's trust and safety team. The exchange between Roth and his colleagues makes clear that they had been pushing Jack for greater restrictions restrictions on the speech that Twitter allows around elections. Again, slippery slope argument. It's definitely there. I don't think that speech should be restricted in any way, shape, or form unless it is unconstitutional, and there is very, very little unconstitutional free speech. Obviously, inciting violence is unconstitutional, but as a whole, I don't think that's good. I know the argument is they're a private company, they can do what they want, and I normally would agree with that if it weren't for the fact that Twitter is Twitter, if it weren't for the fact that they are the public service. The whole, they're a public company, they're a private company, they can do what they want. If, a black guy walked into a franchise McDonald's and they refuse his service because he was black, they're a private company, they can do what they want. Well, no, they can't. That's a discriminatory practice. They cannot refuse service to him based on his skin color or his ethnicity or sexual orientation or anything to that effect. So I would say that, and again, I'm not a liar. I could be wrong about some of these, but this is my understanding of the law. And so yes, I'm not a fan of Twitter doing this. I don't think they should have been able to do it. I don't think they should be able to do it. I don't think any of these large tech companies that operate as the public square should be allowed to do this. The colleagues wants to know if the decision means that Trump can finally be banned. The person asks, does this incitement to violence aspect change the calculus? Man, I'm dumb. Ross says it doesn't. Trump continues to just have his one strike. This is for everything else. Okay, so not a whole lot added there. Roth's colleagues' query about incitements to violence heavily foreshadows what will happen the following day. On January 8th, Twitter announces a permanent ban on Trump due to risk of further incitement of violence. After close review of recent tweets from the real Donald Trump account and the context around them, specifically how they are being received and interpreted on and off Twitter, we have permanently suspended the account due to the risk of further incitement of violence. I didn't agree with this even when it happened, and I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a politics supporter in general. I'm very, very down the middle. I think the left sometimes has some good ideas. The right sometimes has some good ideas. I think Trump sometimes had good ideas. Other times had abysmal ideas. So, but I wasn't on board with this because it's very, to me at least, it was very telling when the public square would bring the ban hammer down on literally the leader of the free world. Love him or hate him, that's what he was. On January 8th, Twitter says its ban is based specifically on how Trump's tweets are being received and interpreted. But in 2019, Twitter said it did not attempt to determine all potential interpretations of this content or its intent. So, we focus on language of reported tweets, do not attempt to determine all potential interpretations of the content or its intent. Which, in theory, sounds fantastic. We now know, thanks to the Twitter files, that's not what was happening. But in theory, that's good. That's how these things should be practiced. The only serious concern we found expressed within Twitter over the implications for free speech and democracy of banning Trump come from a junior person in the organization. It was tucked away in lower-level Slack channel known as Site Integrity Auto. This might be an unpopular opinion, but one-off ad hoc decisions like this that don't appear rooted in policy are, in my opinion, a slippery slope, thank you, and reflect an alternatively equally dictatorial problem. dictatorial problem. This now appears to be a fiat by an online platform CEO with a global presence that can gatekeep speech for the entire world, which seems unsustainable. That is entirely true and accurate. I mean, let's say it wasn't Twitter. You know, any large company that tries to filter things like this, there's going to be consequences. You know, back to that McDonald's example. Let's say that they were allowed to bar that black man service just for his skin color. Let's say that was legal and allowed. I think they'd probably go out of business because that guy hops on Twitter or goes around to everybody in his town and says, this McDonald's franchise didn't serve me a burger because I'm black. Everyone's going to be like, we don't want to support a racist company, and they stop going to that McDonald's goes out of business. I mean, or he hops on Twitter and just has the internet dogpile, this particular McDonald's location or McDonald's corporate, they'd still go out of business. So, yeah, you do need, the people ultimately should be the ones that get to decide. I mean, you should get to vote with our words and, more importantly, with our wallets. And that's, what people on Twitter, primarily conservatives, try to do. The majority probably stuck around, try to fight the good fight, what they consider the good fight. And there were several that, either voluntarily left or were banned because of this bias. Now, again, I've already stated, I'm not a fan of that. I want free and open discourse. I loved the fact that Kanye West was, putting his blithering, idiotic statements on the Alex Jones show, because we get to hear these blithering, idiotic statements. He's talking about running for president in 2024. I'm glad that he was not censored from saying, I like Hitler, I love Nazis, whatever it was that he said, because of that being uncensored, we now know that about him. There are probably people that, I hope this is not the case, but maybe, there are probably people out there that were going to vote for the dude, and then he said that, and they're like, whew, never mind. And because of that statement, we, probably should have avoided Kanye being elected president in 2024. So, yeah, keeping the crazies public is a good thing. This might be an unpopular... Okay, so that's what was just stated. Twitter employees use the term one-off frequently in their Slack discussions. Its frequent use reveals significant employee discretion over when or whether to apply warning labels on tweets and strikes on users. Here are typical examples. Could have bounced with a strike. I don't see any scenario where we would decide not to bounce here. That's not accurate, but okay. Just want to check if there are any concerns. Otherwise, I can bounce under RTP and close this one before I go. FYI, as account for review at U.S. session, we're trying to understand the one-off decision here. Friday, November 6, 2020. There's always abuse one-off. Friday, November 6, 2020, literally a few seconds later. Bounce one-off is the option. Obviously, there's things that are redacted. I'm not sure what it's referring to. Recall from the Twitter Files 2 by Barry Weiss that according to Twitter staff, we control visibility quite a bit, and we control the amplification of your content quite a bit. Normal people do not know how much we do. That's a scary sentence. I'm sorry. That's a flat-out scary sentence. I mean, you can talk about the lizard people Illuminati, and that's insane, but there's literally a cabal of folks behind computers. That's right. We don't know how much they do. I mean, again, I got banned for talking shit on Disney Star Wars. That's bananas. I couldn't even have an opinion on a film franchise? Whew. I mean, I'm a nerd. I like talking about my Star Wars. Twitter employees recognize the difference between their own politics and Twitter's terms of service, TOS, but they also engage in complex interpretations of content in order to stamp out prohibited tweets, as a series of exchanges over the Stop the Steal hashtag reveal. I'm not sure what Stop the Steal was, or Stop the Steal. Probably in terms of like stealing an election, maybe? I'm sorry, don't remember, or even know. Hey, hope you're doing okay, we're able to get some sleep. Can we or have we already discussed blocking the Stop the Steal hashtag? It's furthering fake news in a dangerous way that I can tell. Okay, Stop the Steal, fake news. Yeah, it was probably about how the election was stolen. Got it. Okay. Hey there, we're proactively servicing the content for review under civic integrity, and it should be blocked from typehead and trends. If you're seeing it in either of the latter two, let me know ASAP and PT can fix. I just saw the hashtag and then did a search on it, and all the content was appalling, so I don't think it's showing up elsewhere. Thank you for all you're doing. I'll flag the election squad. Election squad? That sounds scary. The election squad. Like, I'd join the suicide squad before I joined the election squad. And, no, I wouldn't. I don't think I can deal with listening to Harley Quinn's bullshit. But I wouldn't join the election squad either. Remember that what I find appalling and what is a toss of IO are not exact overlap. Heh. Right. And you should always go with the toss of IO and not your own personal preference. There's plenty of shit that people on both sides have said that I don't like. I wouldn't ban them. I would just point out how stupid it is. Like what I'm doing now. Roth immediately DMs a colleague and asks that they add Stop the Steal and QAnon conspiracy term. Yeah, there it is. Good old QAnon. They say good things like, pedophilia is bad in Hollywood, which we all agree on. And then they go into crazy shit like JFK Jr. is coming back from the dead to run for president. The internet has made us all worse. Kraken, to blacklists of terms to be de-amplified. Ross' colleagues objects that blacklisting Stop the Steal risks de-amplifying counterspeech that validates the election. No, there's a lot going on. Any objections to adding Stop the Steal and Kraken to the CHAQ terms list as if they weren't already? I'm not sure what CHAQ is. The daylight separating Q and Stop the Steal, Q maybe like QAnon. Stop the Steal stuff is now effectively zero. Kraken for sure, it's not already there. I'm too worried about the risk of de-amplifying counterspeech with Stop the Steal. As you should be. De-amplifying counterspeech. He might be referring to their own side. Saying, hey, we support the hashtag Stop the Steal being banned, and then when they use that hashtag, it also takes away their tweet. So that's probably what he's referring to. Again, it's a dangerous precedent to set. So, precedent. Anyway. Indeed, notes Ross' colleague, a quick search at the top of Stop the Steal tweets and their counterspeech quickly comes up with the solution. De-amplify accounts with Stop the Steal in the name profile, since those are not affiliated with counterspeech. Oh, not good. That's that slippery slope stuff I'm talking about. Yeah, just a quick search of the Stop the Steal tweets. Kraken I'm comfortable with. Top tweets generally Q related. I'm noticing an absence of counterspeech. Actually, we can de-amplify accounts with Stop the Steal in the name profile level. Those are not affiliated with counterspeech. It turns out that even blacklisting Kraken is less straightforward than they thought. That's because Kraken, in addition to being a QAnon conspiracy theory based on the mythological Norwegian sea monster, is also the name of a cryptocurrency exchange, and thus it's also the name of a alcohol, isn't it? Isn't there isn't that a rum, Kraken? So I mean, if you're saying like, let's ban Kraken, they're like, well, there's no prohibition. I know it's the 20s, but different 20s. I like my drinks. Drink Sailor Jerry, you'll be fine. Employees struggle with whether to punish users who share screenshots of Trump's deleted J6 tweets. We should bounce these tweets with strike given the screenshot violates the policy. They are criticizing Trump, so I'm a bit hesitant with applying the strike to this user. Fuck off. Oh my god, even Twitter says it's inciting violence. And there we have the human element again, though. Was it inciting violence? That's a thing that's up for debate, and different people are going to have different viewpoints. I'll be honest, I don't think it was inciting violence myself. I think it's stupid. It's a dumb tweet. It's a bad tweet. It could have been worded a whole lot better. It could have been sent a whole lot earlier. But I don't think it incited violence. People are still individuals. They get to decide, choose things for themselves. You could flip this around by him saying, go home with love and peace. All the people that went home with love and peace, did Donald Trump make them do that? No, they chose to. He didn't twist their arm. So you're getting into a really scary gray area here, Twitter. What if a user dislikes Trump and objects to Trump's censorship? Did I say Trump? Anyway, the tweets still get deleted, but since the intention is not to deny the election result, no punishing strike is applied. If there are instances where the intent is unclear, please feel free to raise. Okay, that doesn't sound good. Alright. What if it's neutral sharing opinion, like I told you it violates Twitter policy? Delete tweet only? I would agree with tweet delete only on agreeing with policy. Blank, can I get your opinion here? Like, would agree on delete only in instances where the content's not shared with abusive intent. But again, are you guys the moral arbiters? Do you get to decide intent? Like, obviously, a lot of times intent can just be inferred by context. But also, just screenshots, little blurbs, 140 characters or whatever Twitter allows, character limits, also don't give a lot of room for context. I mean, we've seen that problem since Twitter's inception. Around noon, a confused senior executive in an advertising sales sends a DM to Roth. Sales exec. Jack says we will permanently suspend Trump if our policies are violated after a 12-hour account lock. What policies is Jack talking about? Let's see. Spreading misinfo, violation like his past tweets about the election, or is it more about a tweet inciting violence? I'm asking because we were getting tons of calls from clients following Facebook and Instagram decision. So some clarity would be great. Thanks. Hey JP, for internal awareness, this would be any policy violation, not just limited to elections, but before sharing anything, please coordinate with someone on the comm side. Obviously a ton of interest in our position on this and want to ensure we stay aligned. So that's... What sort of interests are they talking about? Business interests? Are they talking about any sort of collusion with other big companies, brand deals? Are they talking about politicians that have interest? I mean, that can go a lot of different ways. I know we're not getting full context from these, and frankly, I don't think any of the versions that I just listed, business interests, political interests, I think none of those are good because with Twitter being the town square, there should have been a whole lot more transparency. I'm hoping for more transparency in the future. I think this is a good start. The files like this. What happens next is essential to understanding how Twitter justified banning Trump. Sales exec. Are we dropping the public interest policy now? Roth 6 hours later. In this specific case, we're changing our public interest approach for this account. Thanks, Yule. We'll contact with comms team for sure. One last question. Okay, so read that. Any violation could be a trigger. I hate that word. Once again, it's like Nazi. It's lost all meaning. It's lost all meaning. To me, Trigger is a studio that makes subpar anime. That's what Trigger is to me. But apologies for the slow reply. I've been back to back all day today. In this specific case, we're changing our public interest approach for his account to say any violation would result in suspension. We aren't completely getting rid of the public interest approach, though we do not have work planned on revisions in H1 2021. You kind of are getting rid of the public interest approach, at least in the interests of the conservatives on Twitter. And that's still half the country. I mean, it was pretty dang 50-50, if I remember right, in those elections. I mean, it was, in 2016 especially, it was close. They were both close, if I remember correctly. So that's kind of a disingenuous statement. The ad exec is referring to Twitter's policy of public interest exceptions, what allows the content of elected officials even if it violates Twitter rules, if it directly contributes to the understanding or discussion as a matter of public concern. At present, we limit exceptions to one critical type of public interest content, tweets from elected and government officials, given the significant public interest in knowing and being able to discuss their actions and statements. Don't really have a comment on that. Roth pushes for permanent suspension of Rep. Matt Gaetz, even though it doesn't quite fit anywhere. Duh. Kind of a test case for the rationale for banning Trump. I'm trying to talk the Twitter safety team into removal as a conspiracy that incites violence. What's the latest on Antifa claims? Anything brewing policy-wise? And that's the thing. Antifa, they also incite violence. Now, I'm not saying it's never happened, but I've never seen an Antifa account banned. And in fact, I've seen many conservatives, shoot screenshots of what could be considered inciting violence. Things far more vile than what Trump said. And those accounts went unpunished. And frankly, my personal thing is I'm okay with that. Like I said, I want the crazies out there. But we're talking about rule enforcement and the fairness. So my point of view doesn't really matter. I would want Trump to stay and the Antifa guys to stay, or both to go if both made violations. Yeah, SP and SI are working on that. It doesn't quite fit anywhere, duh. But I'm trying to talk safety into treating it as an incitement. I think we'll get over the line for removal as a conspiracy that incites violence. Vidya was directionally okay with it. Of course she was. Vidya is the monster under the bed. She is the boogeyman. A lot of what we're seeing that are major problems on Twitter are because of her and her just stalwart oppression of thoughts that, she didn't agree with. I mean, shit. Maybe I was banned because she loves the Disney Star Wars saga, and she was like, what? This 50 follower account doesn't like Rey? Fuck him! That's maybe that's what happened. I highly doubt that. I 99.999% jest, but who knows? They've already said we don't know how much goes on behind the scenes. So, around 2:30, comms execs DM Roth and said they don't want to make a big deal of QAnon ban to the media because they fear if we push this, it looks like we're trying to offer up something in place of the thing everyone wants, meaning a Trump ban. That's a very interesting statement. I mean, it sounds like they're saying hey, if we ban QAnon, it's just a way to quiet the masses so we can keep Trump unbanned. Like we're offering this as a consolation prize. And that's not what ended up happening, as we all know. But B, if both were a problem, both need banned. If both weren't a problem, both didn't need banned. Plenty of QAnon accounts got banned. Trump ended up getting banned. So we know what side won out. But the fact that it was being looked at like that in the first place is clearly a problem. We're good either way. We'll discuss, but I'm generally in the space of let's start taking action and not do Big's comms push around this. We can explain why if we're asked, but worry we've pushed this. Looks like we're trying to offer something. Oh, yeah, I just read that. That evening, a Twitter engineer DMs Roth to say, I feel like a lot of debates around exceptions stem from the fact that Trump's account is not technically different from anybody else's and yet treated differently due to his personal status without corresponding Twitter rules. Yes, exactly. Trump's account was not different than anyone else's. I mean, his status was different, but his account wasn't. At least that is my belief. In fact, I would say his should be treated different because of Twitter being the public square and because he was the leader of the free world. Love him or hate him, like his opinions, don't like his opinions, like his policies, don't like his policies. We needed to be informed. Now, you could say, oh, well, CNN will report, on his dealings. Fox will report on his dealings. That is still secondary information. Used to, we could just hop on Twitter and see Trump's direct thoughts and opinions. And as insane as some of them and a lot of them were, there's really there's no room for misconstruing them. We don't have to sit there and wonder, well, did CNN skew the truth this way? Did Fox skew the truth that way? Nah, we were effectively getting it straight from the horse's mouth. Straight from the Kavivi's cup. Hi, Yoel. I'm sure you're very busy right now. My apologies if this is distraction to your work. I wonder if there has been discussion about reshaping the rules around official accounts, e.g., real Donald Trump and other accounts, or unverified account. I feel like a lot of debates around exceptions stem from the fact that Trump's account is not technically different from anybody. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we read that part. Ross' response hints at how Twitter would justify deviating from this long-standing policy. To put a different spin on it, policy is one part of the system of how Twitter works. We ran into that world changing faster than we were able to adapt or the product or the policy. We didn't, though. That's unfortunately not true. The world was not different because of the January 6th riots. I mean, there was rioting in the streets. There was several Black Lives Matter riots in the streets, and those were oftentimes actually had more casualties than the January 6th ones. Now, I think both were bad. I'm not a fan of riots either way. All I'm saying is the world hadn't changed. You've seen riots like this before, but because they aired on a political side that you agreed with, you let those stay. When technically, if those were TOS violations as well, that should have been handled. Or if they weren't TOS violations, then neither should these January 6th ones. You clearly played a major decision based on politics. The world didn't change. You just, when it changed, when one side took a similar action to, when the side you don't agree with took a similar action to the one you do, you all of a sudden need to change the rules. It's like a 6-year-old losing at a game they made up, you know, when they're playing with you, and then they change the rules to benefit themselves. You're like, oh, whatever, it's cute. It's a 6-year-old. They'll grow out of this. But this is a multi-billion-dollar company ran by adults. They shouldn't be treating this like a 6-year-old made-up game. The evening of January 7th, the same junior employee who expressed an unpopular opinion about the ad hoc decisions, they don't appear rooted in policy, speaks up one last time before the end of the day. Okay, so yeah, that was the same one from earlier. Earlier that day, the employee wrote, "My concern specifically surrounds the unarticulated logic of the decision by Facebook. That space fills with the idea, conspiracy theory, that all internet moguls sit around like kings, casually doing what people can and cannot see." That is what a lot of us think, though. A lot of us little guys, especially the ones that don't fall on either side, who feel like we're getting butt fucked by both sides, think exactly this. You know, do I like Elon Musk better than you know, other folks that are on Twitter? Yeah, absolutely. But I also don't know what he's getting up to. Maybe the dude likes to fucking eat babies behind the scenes, and he's just got enough money to cover it up. Yeah, I guess maybe. So yeah, when my account was, you know, deactivated for talking shit on Star Wars, you know, I don't know what's going on when people are talking about actual important shit that maybe big wigs in these tech companies don't agree with. Like, you know, if Mark Zuckerberg's, you know, favorite video game is Ratchet and Clank, and I'm over here like, oh well, Jak and Daxter is clearly superior, and then Zuckerberg brings the banhammer down on me just because he doesn't like Jak and Daxter, even though it's the superior game. I mean, let's be honest, folks. That's cause for alarm. That's cause for concern. The employee notes later in the day, and Will Ormus noticed the inconsistency too, linking to an article for 1.0 at Medium called "Facebook chuckled at its own rulebook to ban Trump." Facebook chucked its own rulebook to ban Trump. The underlying problem, writes Will Ormus, is that the dominant platforms we have always been loath to own up to their subjectivity because it highlights the extraordinary, unfettered power they wield over the global public square. Facts. And this places the responsibility for that power on their own shoulders. So when they hide behind an ever-changing rulebook, alternatively pointing it to when it's convenient and shoving it under the nearest rug when it isn't. Double facts! Facebook's suspension of Trump now puts Twitter in an awkward position. If Trump does indeed return to Twitter, the pressure on Twitter will ramp up to find the pretext in which to ban him as well. Indeed, and as Barry Weiss will show tomorrow, that's exactly what happened. Well, alright guys, that's the end of the Twitter Files Part 4. You know, what did we take away from all this? You know, what I took away from this is that Twitter knew they were changing their own rules in real time to justify their own, you know, their own subjective view of morality, of what is politically the correct things, you know, to say, do, whatnot. That, you know, companies like Twitter, Facebook, they're changing their stuff all the time to benefit themselves and not to benefit us. And again, if it were any other company, I'd actually be fine with that because a company can do what they want. But when it's something like Twitter, when it is the public square, that's not how you can operate. You know, I am terrified of some sort of cyberpunk world that we could be, we could fall into when corporations like this get to decide what is and isn't okay to hear and to see. Like this, 1984 might have been a work of fiction, but it's a work of fiction that could become a work of fact. And that's not a world I want to see. I don't think anybody does, or maybe folks are so deluded that they think that there's a way that, oh, that you know, it's bad in that book, but we can find a way to positively implement it in real life. No, you can't. You know, people want to talk about, you know, the right fascist this, the left fascist that. No, this is fascism. This is not an oligarchy. I don't remember the term, but basically the term for when it is when the state is ran by big corporations. You know, Futurama's made jokes about it. Again, 1984. There's just example after example in fiction, and the reason it's such a common trope in fiction is because of the plausibility. It creates a world that is realistic enough for us to invest in and see as possible, while also have escapism because it's not real. But that's why I think the Twitter files are important. That's why I think that we should be keeping up with them. I'm going to keep reporting on them as I read them, give my opinions. And this won't be, again, this isn't the typical thing I want to report on. I want to talk about Magic the Gathering. I want to talk about Star Wars. I want to talk about Star Wars without my account getting banned. So, Elon, I hope you're not a Disney Star Wars fan. My next video is going to be a nerdcore reaction to a nerdcore rap song that's dropped about, the anime Bleach. So, but this sort of stuff does need addressed. It does need talked about. And until then, come back for the next episode on Words of Paradise.